Okay, today we're going to talk about Chapter 6, the Elimination Method. This is a second of three methods that we're going to cover for Chapter 6 instead of doing the book. Um, you should have already done the substitution method. If not, you should go back and watch the substitution method video. So this is the elimination method. So here's our elimination method. In the substitution method, we were looking for either x equals or a y equals. And if you look at these, there's not an easy way to get x or y equals. It's possible. It would take some more work, but it is possible to do. You'd have to solve for either x or y. But we have another method that we can deal with when you see this set up, and it's called the elimination method. Just like it sounds, elimination method means that you are eliminating something. So we are looking for something that we can either add or subtract that equals 0. And what I see when I see this first example is right here. I got the pen on. So if I look right here, I see 5y minus 5y, or negative 5y plus 5y. If I add this up, that equals 0y. And I've now eliminated y. And ultimately, that's what we want to do, is eliminate one of our numbers. So the elimination works like this. I want to add up these two equations, and I'm going to add them up, the x's with the x's, the y's with the y's, the constants with the constants. So they have to be in the same order. So the x is in one spot, the y is in one spot, the constants on one spot. And I'm going to add straight up or down or subtract to eliminate it. So here I want to add, so I'm going to add these two equations together. So I'm going to add straight up and down. So adding, I got 3x plus 7x. When I add that up, I get 10x. Next, I get negative 5y plus 5y is 0y. So I don't have to write it because it's 0y. And I got 10 plus 20 is 30. So again, this is called the elimination method because something got eliminated. In this case, it was the y's were eliminated. So we added up and down. 7 plus 3 is 10x. This equals 0. And 20 plus 10 is 30. Now, all I have to do is divide, so one-step equation, divide both sides by 10. And I get x equals 3. So just like before, once I get one of the letters, in this case I got x, I get to plug it back in. In this case, we have two choices. Either equation works. You get to decide which you think is easier. I'm going to pick the top one just because it has slightly smaller numbers. But if you like the bottom one, you can. So I'm going to plug in x where I see, or 3 where I see x. So I see 3. Instead of x, I'm going to replace it with this 3 because x is 3. Minus 5y equals 10. 3 times 3 is 9. So I got 9 minus 5y equals 10. And now I got a two-step equation. So I need to move this 9. It's positive, so I'm going to subtract it. So I'm going to subtract 9 from this side. And I do it to both sides. So 9 minus 9 is 0. 10 minus 9 is 1, so I get negative 5y equals 1. And we're going to divide negative 5 to both sides, and y equals negative 1/5. So in this case, and it ended up being a fraction, I got the number 3 and negative 1/5. Just like before, you can leave them separate and just circle the two answers, or you can put it in point form. So let's look at another example. In this case, I see 4x and 4x. I see a 6 and an 8y. The x's look more similar, so I want to look at these two x's right here. If I add, I get 8x, so that's not going to help me. But I don't have to add. I could subtract. And if I subtract, then it goes away. So you have two choices here. I'm going to show you both of them. So step one is to subtract. And the reason this is dangerous is once you start subtracting, you got to remember you're subtracting everything. So we got 4x minus 4x is nothing. Negative 6y minus 8y is negative 14y. And 6 minus 20 ends up being negative 14. So that's what we get. Now, the danger is you forget to subtract over here, you forget to subtract over here, and here we added, and now we're subtracting. So here's the other method. I'm going to erase that, and we'll end up at the same point again. So the other method is this. You can multiply either the top or the bottom by negative 1 first, and change everything, and then you can do the make it look like this one. So let's multiply this bottom by -1. And I'm going to multiply everything by -1. So now on the bottom I got -4x minus 8y. And over here I got equals to -20. And the first one I still had 4x minus 6y equals to 6. All I did is copy this top one down. And now, because I have a positive and negative, I can add. So now we can add like we were doing before. This still cancels. -8 minus 6 gives us -14y. -20 plus 6 gives us another -14. And now we can finish it. This is what we had before. So either method is okay. If this helps you, go for this way. If the other one was easier, go for that one. Divide both sides by -14. And y ends up being 1. And just like before, once we know 1, we can plug it in. You can pick either equation. I'm going to pick the top one. So I got 4x minus 6. And we already found out that y is 1. So 6 times 1 equals 6. 6 times 1 is simply 6. So I got 4x minus 6 equals 6. We're going to add 6 to both sides. So 4x ends up being 12. Dividing both sides by 4, x ends up being 3. So we got x is 3, y is 1, so our point is 3, 1. So those are two different ways to solve it. The first one is the most straightforward way. The second one, you have two different options, but it's actually also very easy to see where it is. But if I look at the next example, it's not as obvious. So I don't see any numbers in common. This is a 3 and a 4. This is a 2 and a 4. So what I have to do is I get to kind of do what I just did, is I get to multiply 1 to make it bigger. So if I look at this top one, I see a 2 and a 3. If I multiply this by 2, I get 4. And there is no easy way to get from a 3 to the 4. So we're going to multiply this top number by 2. And as soon as I decide 2 to make this a 4, I got to do it to everything. So I'm going to multiply the whole thing by 2. So I got 2 times 2x is 4x. As a matter of fact, let's multiply it by -2, and then I don't have to subtract later. So we got -4x. -2 times 3y is a -6y. Over here, 10 times -2 is -20. Okay, so we multiplied everything by -2. So now I see a 4x and a -4x, and now I'm all set to add up. So 4x minus 4x is nothing. 4y minus 6y is -2y. And 14 minus 20 is -6. Last step, got to divide everything by -2. So y ends up being +3. Negative over negative is positive. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So y is +3. And just like before, I can pick either of these two equations. I'm going to pick the bottom one just to be a little bit different this time. So I got 4x plus 4. The y I now know. The y is now 3, so I got 4 times 3 equals 14. 4 times 3 is 12, so I get 4x plus 12 equals 14. Two-step equation. Get rid of this 12 first. We're going to subtract it from both sides. So I got 4x equals to 2. Dividing both sides by 4. X ends up being 2 over 4, which is the number 1/2. So this one is 1/2, 3. If you want to have a decimal, it'd be 0.5, but either one's fine. You can leave it as a half. Okay, let's look at this one. In this case, I got a 2 and a 3. I got a 5 and a 7. And there's no easy way. I can't make a 2 and a 3, and I can't make a 5 into a 7. So you have to multiply both equations by something in order to get a common number. This is like when you used to find the least common multiple way back in elementary school. So the easiest one I see is to make this into a 6. I can do that by multiplying this 3 by 2, and the bottom one, and I can make a 2 into a 3. Your other choice is to make the y's into a 35 by multiplying this by 7 and the bottom one by 5. The choice is really yours. I'm going to stick with the smaller numbers just because I want. So I want to make these 6's. In order to make this one a 6, I'm going to multiply by 2. And I need to multiply the bottom one by 3 because I want this to be a 6. And let's go ahead and multiply the bottom one by a -3, so I have one positive and one negative when I'm done with it. So let's multiply the top. I got 2 times 3x is 6x. 2 times 5y is 10y. And over here I got 8 times 2 is 16. So far so good. On the bottom one I got negative 3 times 2 is negative 6x. Negative 3 times 7y would be negative 21y. And 9 times 3 is 27, so this is negative 27. So adding up, that's 0. Negative 21 plus 10 is negative 11y. And on the other side, I got a 27 minus 16 is another negative 11. Now I got a one-step equation dividing both sides by negative 11. Y ends up being 1. And as always, you get to pick either equation you're going to plug y back into. Let's go ahead and pick the top one. So I got 3x plus 5. Instead of y, I now know it's 1, so I put a 1 there, equals 8. So I got 3x plus 5. 5 times 1 is 5, equals 8. Subtract 5 from both sides. 3x ends up being 3. 8 minus 5 is 3. Dividing both sides by 3, x ends up being 1. So this number ends up being 1 comma 1. Both x and y happen to be the same number. They happen to be 1. Okay? I want you to go ahead and try these by yourself. If you've done them if you're doing them in class, you can skip this portion of the video and go ahead and do a discussion board post. If you would like to try them now, go ahead and pause the video, but we will be doing these in class. Okay, I'm going to assume that you have now paused the video and you have already tried these. So let's do this first one. This is already nicely set up, so we're simply going to add these numbers up. So I got 2x plus 4x is 6x. Those cancel. 50 plus 10 is 60. Equal sign is still in the same spot, so I get 6x equals 60. We're going to divide both sides by 6. So x ends up being 10. 60 divided by 6 is 10. And we get to plug them back in. I'm going to plug it into the second equation. So I got 4 times 10 minus 10y equals to 10. This is 40 minus 10y equals 10. Subtract 40 from both sides. I get a negative 10y is equal to 10 minus 40 is negative 30. Dividing both sides by negative 10, and negative over negative is positive. So this ends up being positive 3. So our answer is x is 10 and y is 3. Okay, on this one, I'm going to end up multiplying this top one by 2 to make this 3 into a 6. So let's multiply everything by, well, we'll make it negative 2 so we don't have to subtract later. Okay, so we got negative 2 times 3 is negative 6x. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10y. And negative 2 times 15 is negative 30. So adding these up, I got 6x minus 6x is nothing. 10y minus 10y is nothing. Since I have nothing on the left-hand side, I got to put a 0 over there. On the right-hand side, I got 30 minus 30, which is nothing. Well, this is an interesting situation. I end up with 0 equals 0. Just like in the substitution method, you can either have a true or false statement. If you have a true statement, your answer should be infinitely many solutions. If you end up with a false statement, your answer should be no solutions. 0 is indeed equal to 0, so this is a true statement. So there is infinitely many solutions. This is another one of those cases where these are the same line. So this is infinitely many solutions. Okay, if you haven't already done so, make sure you do your discussion board post by either posting a question or something that you've learned from this video, and ask lots of questions in class, and make sure you understand both the substitution and elimination method before you take a quiz on it.